I see that some of you are planning on going to concerts right away, which is great. So this is a little bit about how to fill out the concert form. Here's the concert report form. It's the first one. This is due by the end of the 8th week of classes, so you have some time. And if you do go to something, this is probably going to be the right form. If you end up going to an opera before the 8th week, then you'll want to fill out the opera form, which you can find there in the concert form tab. A lot of this is pretty easy to get going on if you do go to a concert right away. For example, things like filling in your name, date, place, name of the ensemble performing, and so on. A couple things I wanted to point out that you might not know yet. Number 8, it asks what genres of music were performed. Now, this week's weekly module has a lecture of Craig Wright's, and he talks a bit about this. So listen to that if you haven't yet. And a suggestion and a hint is that if you're not sure what type of music was being performed, a lot of times it'll tell you in the title. For example, Beethoven's Symphony No. 3 in E-flat major. The name symphony is in the title, so that would be an example of a genre. Number 9 is something that we're going to go over later on in the semester. For now, I'll just tell you that when a work is programmatic, it means that, first of all, it's just instruments, there's no singing, and the composer is trying to convey a story, a poem, a picture, an idea through the music. So a hint with number 9 is if it's programmatic, probably there's some kind of suggestion in the title. Like, for example, Romeo and Juliet by Tchaikovsky is a programmatic piece that depicts the Shakespeare play through the music. Number 11 is the part that might be a little bit more challenging, and I'd like to talk about that with you. So in case you haven't been to a concert ever, or it's been a while, I want to remind you or ask you who the composer is. Do you know who the composer is? The composer, if you said that's the person that composed the music, you're right. The conductor is the person that is standing up front with the baton conducting. The composer, unfortunately, in the United States, most of the time the composer is somebody that's not living anymore because we tend to hear pieces that are classics, and that means very often that the composer is not alive. So the composer would be the person that wrote the music, and what I would like you to do is actually don't take the forms with you to the concert, but just keep an open mind when you go to the concert, and then as soon as possible afterwards fill this stuff out, because hopefully there's some things that are memorable about it. When you go to the concert, just what I'd like you to do is focus on a couple things that would describe each piece. So a little more vocabulary here. Let's take a look at the concert program so we can figure out what's meant by title and movements. Looking on the internet for an example of a concert program, and I found this. It's actually very old. This is from 1950, but it has all the info that we need for right now. This is a program, so what you see listed here, in addition to the date of the performance and the location of the performance and the performing ensemble, this is the Boston Symphony Orchestra, a famous group that still exists. You've got the pieces that were played. Can you tell by looking at this, and I apologize if this isn't clear. I don't know why my PowerPoints and my videos are blurry, but hopefully you can kind of squint at it and see how many pieces are on the program. So I might get different answers here. Some of you might have said 3, some of you might have said something like 11, and it kind of depends on what you're looking at. The correct answer is actually 3. The first piece is the Overture to Fidelio by Beethoven. On the right is the composer's name, and on the left is the title of the piece. The second piece is Beethoven's Symphony No. 1 in C major. Then there's an intermission, and they usually last about 15 minutes. And then the second half is the very famous and great piece Symphony No. 3 in E-flat major, also by Beethoven. This is an all Beethoven concert. Now, when you're filling out the concert form and it asks you to list 2 different pieces, I'd like you guys to pick something from the first half and something from the second half so that I know that you stayed for the whole concert. Let's say you choose to describe this first piece. It's called Overture to Fidelio. You would, on the concert form, just write Overture to Fidelio. Here's the concert form again. I just typed in, for the first selection, Beethoven the composer, and the title Overture to Fidelio. This is an opera that Beethoven wrote, but on an orchestra concert like this, you wouldn't see the whole opera. You just have this standalone orchestral introduction, so it's just the overture. Movements underneath it. Does anyone know what you would put here? If you think nothing, you're absolutely right. This title stands alone, so we just ignore that, and then you would continue to check the historical style. Beethoven was kind of in between the classical and romantic periods, and then describe two things that stood out to you using the musical vocabulary. Remember, you need to pick two pieces. The first one was pretty easy. It's just a standalone work. For the second selection, in this case, I would prefer that you pick the piece from the second half, the piece after intermission, because I want you to stay for the whole concert. What is the title for this last work? It is Symphony No. 3 in E-flat major, also known as the Eroica. The names that are listed underneath that are called movements. This is what's known as a four-movement work. Now, what is a movement? This is the definition from our textbook. A movement is a large, independent section of an instrumental work. Many symphonies are made up of four independent movements. One common mistake that a lot of students make is they'll clap after the first movement because it sounds like it's the end of the piece, where in fact, in classical music, you're really not supposed to. If you have any doubt about whether to clap or not, just wait for the conductor to turn around so that you don't embarrass yourself. Here's the program again. Let's take Symphony No. 3 as our second selection. I went ahead and typed in the second selection, which would be Symphony No. 3 in E-flat major by Beethoven. And underneath where it says movements, I typed in the names of the movements. Most of the time, there's only going to be 3 or 4, sometimes fewer, sometimes more. So I would leave, in this case, I would leave 5 and 6 blank because there's only 4 movements. These movements are in Italian, and what they are usually, as in this case, they're tempo markings, which tells you how fast or slow the music is supposed to go. I'm pretty sure that you've learned a lot of vocabulary in these first couple weeks. This part down here asks you to describe at least a couple things regarding the elements of the work using the musical vocabulary. The rest of the report asks for any instruments that were featured in those pieces, the overall mood, perhaps one of the most important parts of a piece of music. How did it make you feel? Any other thoughts? Which piece did you like the best? Do you happen to own this music? Would you think about buying it? And then don't forget this last part. This asks you to write a brief narrative about your concert experience, just your overall reaction to it. Okay, you guys, just a couple more things to say about concert attendance. These next couple slides are kind of negative, but you know, you should know, and I assume that you do, that you're not supposed to talk or whisper during performances, and you know, don't applaud until the end of the composition. That means don't clap between movements, and again, if you're in doubt, wait till the conductor turns around. I would recommend going to a concert on the early side because for a couple reasons. One is so that you can kind of acclimate yourself to the hall, get comfortable in your seat. Also, a lot of places won't let you in if you're late, so you may end up missing a pretty big chunk of the concert if you're late. Don't check your email on your cell phone. Don't play electronic games. It's actually illegal to take pictures of the performance, so don't do that. And then finally, in preparation, part of the way to prepare for this concert assignment was to do what you did this last week and to plan on some, concerts that look interesting to you. I would recommend becoming familiar with the music. If you know what's going to be played, I would recommend putting it on YouTube or on your iPod and listening to it because when you know a piece of music, it makes it so much more meaningful. I hope you guys enjoy this assignment. To me, live music is what it's all about. It does not compare to listening to music on CDs and recordings. Live music is really the greatest. So I hope that you enjoy your concert experience. It really, as I said, is what it's all about.